Hello everybody, Tyler Edlin here. Now I was just thinking today, it's been ages since I've done a more in-depth critique sort of video with a paint over and everything. So we're going to be doing that today. Now this is an actual recording from a Skype call with a student just a few weeks ago. Skype lets us record it all. They can go back, they can take notes after the session, after the call, and of course go through the paint over at their own speed and try to follow along or embellish whatever they want to. So in this case we have a simple setup, right? It's a shrine, it's in the forest, it's desolate. I did a image myself fairly similar recently, and my goal with this today is to improve the staging, improve the lighting, and improve the colors. We'll be talking a bit about composition and sort of elements like that, but my goal is not to change the composition here. I think the composition is working. I think the focal points is obvious enough, and there'll be two scenes here. And so basically what I want to do is kind of go over all the smaller elements and make sure they really kind of flow well. And so in this case what I'm doing is I'm trying to make a little bit more of a bold statement with the color choices and depth in the image. As you can see in the original one, the coloring is rather flat, and it gets a little too stark and a little bit too white and contrasty. Like all the pigments are either have white to tint it or black to shade it. So one of my first steps with this is I'm just going to bring in a little bit more neutrals, so pretty much a fairly desaturated color, to start painting an atmosphere. And that atmosphere is going to play a part and a role in the staging and bringing these colors out. You see, it's all intertwined. The thing to be wary of, which isn't necessarily the problem here, is that a poorly staged scene will always kind of confuse the viewer, will confuse the audience. But you know, like I said, this is pretty direct. So what I'm doing here, by softening the image with the atmosphere, layering neutral on top of neutral, will, you know, long-term plan with that, or the benefit of that, is it will add a lot of depth to the colors. But that's also letting me enhance the patterns and rhythms of these trees. Now if you do notice the original image there, the patterns get very flat and very regular very quickly. So I'm trying to mix that beat, that tempo up with these trees. Some will be spaced together, some will be spaced apart, some will be larger, some will be further away. And so the immediate effect, the immediate benefit of this is that we can increase the depth in this scene quite a bit with little effort. In real time, this is all within like the first 10 minutes. We can just start to really cover that ground in the forest with loads and loads of foliage and extra additional leaves. Now I should mention as a disclaimer, that image on the left wasn't necessarily the student pushing their skills to 100% capacity there. They're like, they get to this stage, a lot of my students get to this stage, like, I got it this far, they have trouble identifying what can be done to push it further. And we all kind of have those plateaus, those kind of light, soft skill caps there, where we look at our own images, we just don't know how to push it. And this is where having a mentor, having another set of eyes, trained eyes, can really help benefit you in some cases, as you'll start to see the flourishes on this image start to take place. Now what I'm doing here is I'm trying to stage and frame the shrine even further than it already was. So I'm going light on dark and dark on light. So I'm putting against a nice kind of thicker tree, and I'm making it a thicker tree because it'll add as like a visual anchor to that shrine, and it's a good, and due to its increased mass, I can show more form and volume on that by putting a giant highlight on it, which will help the roof right of that shrine pick up. So I'm really starting to push some of the warms and the cools with those color temperatures there. I put a little bit of green in the corner there. I'm trying to feel out how bright or how saturated I can really get away with on this. You can kind of see up in the upper corner there, we did do some color mixing. We were exploring a little bit of the palettes beforehand. I try to go over as many of these components and elements with the students as I possibly can. But basically what I'm working on kind of at this point, since we've laid in some neutrals and put some atmosphere in, is I'm kind of working on this foundational color. And that's really what you're kind of see play out, is lots of small decisions I'm making one after another throughout these steps. What's the local color doing? Is it getting affected by a lot of atmosphere here? Do I want to play up bounce light on this particular local color, like for the trees? Sorry, you guys can probably hear my toddler running around upstairs. That kind of goes with the territory at this point. But yeah, really the key with this sort of painting and progressing past your plateaus with a lot of situations in regards to lighting, it's just simply understanding how light works and how it affects what we see. Now that can come down to a few certain things, like maybe it's the texture, maybe it's the type of material. But what I'm trying to push and enhance here is that light will ultimately determine the areas of texture. Like, so where I'm putting highlights, ultimately that's where I'm going to put the deeper kind of texture indicators. Like I'm getting there, I could paint little smaller pieces of bark, and in the shadow, I'm just going to determine forms with them. I'm going to use bigger brushes. I'm going to use a lot of this atmosphere light that you can see in the scene to just imply it. But if, let's say in this example, if I were to put equal emphasis on texture and detail in light and shadow, that ultimately makes for a very flat image in most cases. Not every case, but most cases. Just because it's going to flatten the scene, because it's going to overstimulate the viewer's eyes with way too much information. So a large part of this, and what a primary problem for a lot of students is simply curating that information and balancing that information in regards to deciding where do I put detail, where do I not put detail. But in a lot of these sort of cases, simply in this particular one, I'm putting higher texture detail in these highlights, and I'm implying more form in the shadows. Now, this is kind of where I'm pretty happy with a lot of the solid construction of this, and I like to kind of give the lighting a little bit more oomph. I like to make a little bit more of a bold statement once the structure's there. I kind of play with it. This is entirely not mathematical. There's not systems or rules for it. I'm simply feeling this out through experience, and it's my interpretation of them on the subject matter based off what the student's goal is to help push that. So there's a little bit of that caveat with it. It's like, I wish I could just say, no, you exactly used purple 738 and on a gradient map right here, and that's always going to make this work. That's not the case for every scene, as every scene is going to be different. Every scene will have different goals. But I do know, like, if I push certain lighter gradients on certain blending modes, like pin light, like linear light, and things like that, I can layer that added cooler atmosphere, if I want a cooler atmosphere, into the trees. And there you can start to see that depth really start to play out, because I'm layering up, like you see here, the colors on top of each other. So some forests, right, they can be warm, they can be yellow and really mellow, but some of these are a little bit more cool. Some of these are a little more tranquil and serene. So this does have a bit of a different feeling than like the shrine I posted about 6 weeks ago. Also disregard that giant pink line on the shrine on this one. That was just merely a layer error as I'm adding some stuff. I basically selected the shrine and I enlarged it, and I was like, just ignore the line, we'll go back and we'll fix that at the end. It's inconsequential, really. But yeah, so see, like, a lot of these elements is what the primary image didn't first kind of get to. Like, okay, branches, trees, leaves, more branches, more leaves. So really building up the density of a forested area without doing any detail. That's the magic of this. This is also the challenge of it. And at this point, I demonstrate to the student two possible ways to fill in very quick detail. The first one was using old school traditional brushwork to imply that texture on the tree. Actually painting it. You could do the same with these rocks. But I like to show options to students. So I'm like, you could also, if you disguise a photo in and blend it properly, you can get some free details from an alright photo kind of just placed in there. And that's kind of what I'm showing here. So again, it's going to always depend on the goal of that student. Do you want something more photo-y? How high do you want to push that detail threshold? there's options. There's always options, particularly in digital art. So it's like, oh yeah, if you want something more painterly, it's okay. You can mix or brush the details on it. You can, scrub the details out. You can color pick from them and paint and mix and match, right? There's so many fun ways to kind of flesh this out. So see, I'm mixing some custom brushes I got from Greg Rutkowski over the photo, and it, with a little bit of effort and time, you can make it look quite nice. But yeah, that's kind of, again, I hit that pink line, but that's kind of wrapping up a lot of the feedback on this particular image. Again, a lot of the problems between this scene and then the interior with students' work is that the colors are flat, and colors are often flat from 3 primary reasons. The first and large one is the values are off. That's going to be a huge structural thing, a huge structural shift. Wasn't so much the problem, with these 2 images with this student. I think they're, for the most part, they're fine. We just improved them. And the second one would be not enough temperature shifts. Now, this largely comes from the student not understanding that color is always transitive. It's always moving from a warmer shift to a cooler shift to a warmer, it's not just like a sterile kind of one-off color. Red is always a warm red, it's always a cool red. And once we understand that and how we can play them against each other, we can add a lot of depth to our colors and scenes. Now, the third sort of primary reason why colors often look flat is because it's inconsistent color theory. And the best way to ensure that you have consistent color theory is like, okay, if you have the local color of an object, so like let's look at this particular shrine scene, right? If we have like a brownish wood floor and a red painted wall, those are the local colors. So if we wanted to ensure that there's good color theory in this, we could either decide, okay, these highlights from the key light, right, the light coming through that window, are all going to be warm. So I'm going warmer in color shift and temperature on all these materials that the light is directly hitting. And therefore, if I desaturate that, if I take the light and the warm out of that in the shadow areas, it'll feel a little bit more cooler. And that would instantaneously give me that consistency that I'm looking for. So see up here where that light kind of dithers off, I go a little bit cooler, and I'm really gonna try to bake that warm sort of red. Right now that red's still pretty neutral, it's still pretty cool, but I guarantee it's gonna pop once I actually get in there and make it warm. So in this image, I'm really not changing much at all. I'm adjusting the color temperatures, the subtle shifts. I'm adjusting the shapes slightly of these light and shadow to speak a little more, to say a little more. And and we talk a little bit about adding more textural information, but by and far, the student did a really good job. You could see, again, from the session, there's some slides from the lectures that I do, and then I always go with the student. We build a nice little reference board and a reference sheet. We talk about the lighting, we do some observational work, and then we get into the overpaints. So see, right there, we really start to boom that lighting up a little bit. We get a little bit of bloom in there. We're playing it up a little bit, but we can feel that warmth now. We can see that temperature shift in the colors, and it absolutely starts to make some of these pop. So yeah, the last little bit that I'm kind of going over here is, again, adjusting those temperature shifts and texture in the floor. And then we add a little bit of that wear and tear to the wood on that main shrine, as that would be a huge part of the focal point, and the texture just gets a little too stiff and a little too sterile. So adding layers, adding chipped, make it feel right that it's part of this lived-in universe is always a great way to improve these sort of subtleties. Part of the design that I am changing is kind of adding a little bit more information in regards to framing and things like that. Again, it's all optional. And then I recommend, you could put little shrines or other little objects and things hanging to make a little bit more of a spectacle of it. But yeah, thank you for watching. And yeah, I want to give a shout out to a student, since we're talking about students this week. Aaron Austin, he's a former student of mine, and yeah, he's just doing really great things these days. This is some of the stuff he's done in my class, some of it he's done beyond it, and yeah, really thorough, doing really good things. But I am giving him a shout out this week because he sent me a nice email, and it's things like this that constantly remind me that, like, this is why you do this. This is, this is the rewards of it. And he just said, thank you for your continued advice and support. Thank you for your help. Now I'm working on my first freelance gig as a concept artist. It's a small contract, but having his first client is a huge milestone for him. It's a huge milestone for everybody. And he said, I've reached out to you so many times since taking your class, and you've always gotten back to me with great feedback, and you even took the time to do a video critique on this image that you could see on screen that helped me land this job. And so you've gone out of your way to help me, and I just want to let you know how much I appreciate it. So again, thank you very much for your kind words. Aaron, if you're at all watching this, and I want to say thank you for thanking me. It's like, you, as an instructor, I do help people all the time. A lot of people, not a lot of people, but there's people out there that don't, ever say thank you, and I don't look for it, but it's like, yeah, it's just nice when it does come around. That's all I'm saying. So guys, thank you for watching, and do subscribe if you like my content, and take care. Guys, thanks for watching. Please hit the subscribe if you want to see more. You can check me out on Facebook, ArtStation, and Instagram. If you want more in-depth content from me, I teach 2 courses at the CG Master Academy, Architecture Design and Fundamentals of Design. If you want even more learning, you can go to brushsauceacademy.com and sign up for one-on-one mentoring. Join the hundreds of students around the world and start improving your art and design today. If you want to be part of a community, we have Brush Sauce on Discord. We have monthly challenges and hangouts. There are links below for everything I mentioned. Thanks again for watching, and take care.